If you have these 7 signs, you've got a rare shadow power that warps reality. What if I told you that the most powerful thing about you isn't your light, but your shadow? Not the part of you that conforms, shines, or fits in, but the part you've buried, denied, or feared. That, maybe, just maybe, the reason your life has felt so intense, so chaotic, so different, is because you've been carrying a kind of power that few people even know exists. A rare spiritual mutation, a kind of metaphysical gravity that doesn't just respond to reality, it bends it, warps it, rewrites it. And if you've ever felt like the world around you changes when your emotions spike, or that people react to you in extreme ways, or that your presence alone seems to shift the energy of a room, you're not imagining it. That's one of the signs. You've got a rare shadow power. Now, before we go any further, let's be clear. This isn't about being dark in a negative sense. Forget the Hollywood version of shadow. Real shadow is sacred. It's the part of your soul that holds mystery, transformation, deep truth, and raw, untamed potential. Most people run from their shadow because it scares them. But you were born to hold it, to master it. And when you do, you unlock something that very few spiritual paths ever teach: the ability to influence the spiritual architecture of your reality, not through force, but through resonance. The deeper you go, the more reality adapts to mirror your inner world. It's not magic, it's mechanics, spiritual physics.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Let me ask you something that only a rare few can answer truthfully. Have you ever noticed that when you're in emotional turmoil, technology fails around you? Lights flicker, people get reactive, or even stranger, synchronicities start happening at an unnatural rate? That's not coincidence, that's your first sign. Your inner world is bleeding into the outer world. Your shadow energy isn't just internal, it projects, it manifests, it pulls strings underneath the surface, and if you're not conscious of it, it can feel like chaos. But when you learn to wield it, when you integrate instead of suppress, you become a living force of reality distortion. Here's another sign that you've got this rare power. People either love you or fear you. There's rarely a middle ground. You walk into a room and the energy shifts. People either open up their soul to you within minutes or they avoid eye contact completely. Why? Because your energy is unfiltered. They feel you before you speak. Your mere presence awakens things in others. Sometimes things they've buried for years. You trigger awakenings, emotional releases, even resistance without trying. That's because your shadow frequency doesn't just interact with people's minds, it interacts with their subconscious. You are a mirror to their unlived truth. But here's something most won't tell you. This power doesn't come without cost. The third sign is that your life has felt intense, not just emotionally, but energetically. You've probably gone through cycles of destruction and rebirth that most people couldn't survive. You've had to shed identities, leave relationships, lose everything, sometimes more than once. And each time, you came back stronger, more wiser, more raw, more real. That's not coincidence. That's because your soul came here to transform not just yourself, but the energetic field around you. You are a living upgrade to the collective grid. But before you could shape reality, you had to be stripped of the illusions that shaped you. The fourth sign is this: you've always felt like you were being watched, not in a paranoid way, but in a mystical one, like something was tracking your growth, guiding you, testing you, sometimes protecting you, sometimes throwing you into the fire. That's because when you carry this kind of shadow power, you're not just an individual, you're a node in the spiritual network. You are watched by both higher consciousness and lower forces. The light wants to awaken you, the shadow wants to test you, because if you activate fully, you become the kind of being that alters timelines with your choices. You're not just playing the game, you're starting to rewrite it. The fifth sign is one you might have ignored. You've always felt ancient. Even as a child, you knew things you weren't taught. You saw through people, systems, even spiritual teachings. You've questioned everything, not because you're rebellious, but because your soul remembers truths that predate this world. You carry codes in your DNA that didn't originate here. And those codes aren't activated through comfort, they're activated through pressure, through darkness, through shadow. That's why your path has never looked like anyone else's. You weren't meant to follow maps, you were meant to build them. Let me ask you a deeper question now. What if your deepest fears of being misunderstood, abandoned, too intense, too emotional, are not signs of brokenness, but signs of power you haven't learned how to hold yet? What if the very things you try to suppress are actually the keys to your reality warping potential? The sixth sign is that you've had moments, fleeting but unforgettable, where you knew you were creating reality in real time. Maybe it was during meditation, or a moment of heartbreak, or a burst of rage or inspiration. But for a second, the veil dropped. You felt the mechanics of the universe respond to your vibration. Time slowed, reality bent. The right person called, the right message appeared. The world glitched. That wasn't a fluke, that was a taste of your potential, a preview of what happens when your shadow and light are aligned, when your frequency becomes coherent, and when that happens consistently, you don't just manifest, you distort the fabric of reality to reflect your inner transformation. And here's the seventh sign, the most important of all. You've always known deep down that you were meant for something more, not in an egoic way, but in a soul-deep, bone-level cosmic contract kind of way. You felt the pull of something immense inside you trying to wake up, and the reason it hasn't fully activated yet is because it's waiting for one thing: for you to stop fearing your shadow, to stop trying to be lightenly, because only when you embrace your full self, your rage, your depth, your sorrow, your chaos, can you unlock the full spectrum of your power. You weren't meant to live a quiet life, you were meant to bend reality by becoming the most unfiltered, aligned, and integrated version of yourself the world has ever seen. The sacred disruptor, how shadow beings are chosen to collapse false realities. You have to understand something now, something most people will never tell you because they're still trying to protect the illusion. You weren't born to play along. You weren't designed to fit into the system. You were never meant to be polite, digestible, or easy to understand. You were born as a sacred disruptor, a walking contradiction, a soul encoded with a frequency that destabilizes illusion the moment you enter a space, and that's not a flaw, that's the assignment. If you carry rare shadow power, it means you've been chosen, yes, chosen, to collapse false realities. Not by preaching, not by fighting with words, but by being, by vibrating at a frequency so raw, so authentic, so unconstrained that the very fabric of artificial systems begins to unravel in your presence. And that's why your life has felt like resistance after resistance for years, maybe even decades, because you weren't just facing your own karma, you were disrupting the karmic patterns of entire lineages, collectives, institutions. You were born into the matrix with the keys to its back door embedded in your soul, and the matrix knows. That's why it tried to break you early. Think about this. Why did life throw so much at you when you were still young, still unprepared? Why did the betrayals, the losses, the abandonment, the spiritual confusion hit you in waves when others seemed to coast? Because the system recognizes energy signatures, and your signature was never subtle. Even in your silence, you were a threat to the structures that feed on fear. You were born with an inner code that says, disrupt what's false, amplify what's real, and that isn't done through violence, it's done through vibration, through presence. You've probably already seen this in action. People either can't lie around you, or they get violently uncomfortable trying. You expose the truth simply by being in your truth. And that's the power of shadow integration. It makes you undeniable. Not loud, not aggressive, undeniable. You don't force people to change, you make it impossible for them to stay asleep in your presence. And yes, that's why they sometimes run or label you or betray you. Because shadow beings don't play by surface rules. You move from a deeper law, a soul law, a cosmic law that speaks not through logic, but through resonance. Have you ever noticed that when you're around people who are ready to evolve, they light up, they start having breakthroughs, they cry, they speak things they've never told anyone, their energy cracks open? That's not random. That's your field doing its work. You weren't trained in this. You are this. You are a catalyst, a walking initiation, and initiations are not always comfortable. They break things, shatter illusions, burn away what no longer serves. That is the sacred disruption. And you've been doing it without even knowing. But here's the catch. Here's what makes this path so intense. You can't collapse false realities around you until you've faced every false reality within you. That's why your journey has felt like a demolition site, because your soul demanded that every lie you inherited be exposed, every mask removed, every comfort rooted in illusion be torn away. It's not punishment. It's preparation. You are being emptied so you can carry something real, something ancient, something future, something that doesn't just sit on altars or live in books, but embodies itself through you. So I'm going to ask you a question now, and don't answer quickly. Let it sink. Let it burn. What false self are you still protecting? And what truth is trying to take its place? Because until you surrender that last mask, that last identity, that last survival pattern, you're still holding back your true power, and the world is starving for it. The sacred disruptor doesn't destroy for the sake of chaos, it destroys for the sake of truth. It burns down what is false so that what is real can finally breathe. You've seen it already. conversations that felt like earthquakes, decisions that cost you everything but gave you your soul back, moments where you walked away from the familiar into the unknown, not because you were fearless, but because you were called. That's the path of the shadow being. It's not about being dark, it's about being deep. So deep that your very existence becomes a threat to superficiality. And here's the most powerful part: the more you own this role, the more life starts to align. The chaos begins to clarify. The people who couldn't handle you start to fade, and the ones who were waiting for your vibration begin to appear. You stop chasing meaning, and meaning starts to orbit around you, because when you own your shadow power, you become magnetic to what is real. And what's real is ready to find you. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be felt. You are not here to blend in, you are here to activate. And if that means breaking a few illusions along the way, so be it. Because the ones who are meant to walk with you, they'll find you in the rubble. They'll rise with you. Emotional alchemy: how your darkest feelings are secret reality-shifting technologies. Now we go deeper, beyond shadow, beyond disruption, into the sacred engine of your reality, shifting power your emotions. And not just your joy, your gratitude, or your love. No, we're talking about the emotions you were taught to hide. The rage, the grief, the jealousy, the fear. The dark, molten core of your inner world. The ones that terrify you because of how real they feel. What if I told you that those emotions are not obstacles on your path, but tools, not curses, but codes? That your darkest feelings are actually the raw fuel of a technology your soul came here to master? Let's be brutally honest. Most spiritual teachings have it wrong. They teach you to bypass, to rise above, to vibrate higher by avoiding the low. But you know better, don't you? Because you've tried that. You've tried to manifest from a place of forced positivity, and it didn't work. You've tried to suppress your anger, your sadness, your grief, and it only got louder. Why? Because your power doesn't live in avoidance. It lives in alchemization. You were never meant to escape your emotions. You were meant to transmute them. Think of your emotions not as feelings, but as frequencies, vibrational data. Each one carries a charge, a message, a portal. When you feel rage, it's not just a reaction, it's a signal that a boundary is being crossed, that something sacred within you wants to protect itself. When you feel grief, it's not just sadness, it's a recalibration of attachment, a process of clearing space for something new. When you feel fear, it's not weakness, it's raw energy, asking to be directed. And when you learn to sit with these feelings, not run from them, you begin to decode their energy. This is emotional alchemy, the process of taking dense, heavy, wild emotional frequencies and transforming them into aligned, coherent, reality-shifting power. And only those who walk the path of the shadow can do this, because only you have the courage to feel it all. Most people numb their pain. You listen to it, you let it move, you let it speak. And that's why you're dangerous to the illusion. Because you don't just react, you transmute. You don't just feel, you forge. You've probably already done this without realizing it. Remember that time you hit rock bottom and something cracked open in you, and from that breakdown came clarity, strength, or a decision that changed everything? That wasn't just survival, that was alchemy. That was your soul using emotional energy to reprogram your path. When you cried until you couldn't breathe, screamed into the night, or sat in silence with your grief, that was your spirit rewiring reality, not with your mind, with your frequency. So let me ask you a question that could change your life. What emotion are you still afraid to feel fully? And what would happen if you finally let yourself feel it all the way through? Because the truth is, what you resist doesn't just persist, it distorts. Suppressed emotions create chaos in your outer world. They leak into your relationships, your decisions, your energy field. But when you feel them fully, consciously, without shame or judgment, they become crystalline, they become clear. And from that clarity you gain access to your true power, the ability to choose your vibration, not fake it. This is how reality begins to bend, not through affirmations alone, but through emotional coherence. When your inner world is aligned, when your shadow and your light aren't at war, you emit a frequency that the universe must respond to. You become a tuning fork for truth. You stop attracting chaos and start magnetizing clarity. You stop chasing what you want and start embodying it. The real flex isn't suppressing your darkness. It's walking into it, eyes open, and saying, I'm not afraid of this. I am this, and I choose what it becomes. That's emotional alchemy. That's the tech your soul came here to master. The reality hacker, how fully integrated beings manipulate timelines through presence alone. Now we arrive at the final truth, the one that most will never even glimpse in their lifetime, the truth that your presence, when fully integrated, becomes a mechanism for timeline manipulation, not in the sci-fi sense of rewinding clocks or jumping into parallel universes, but in the deeply spiritual, vibrational sense of shifting the entire direction of your life and the lives of those around you through nothing but the alignment of your being. This is what it means to be a reality hacker, not someone who forces outcomes through control or obsession, but someone who has integrated so completely with their shadow and light that their presence alone destabilizes lower timelines and magnetizes quantum possibilities. You've probably felt this already, moments where just being around certain people causes them to open up, awaken, or break down. Moments where your decisions seem to ripple outward, causing things to coincidentally fall into place. That's not magic, that's resonance. That's what happens when you become a spiritual tuning fork, vibrating so authentically, so coherently, that the very field around you has no choice but to reorganize. But here's the secret. This level of power doesn't come from trying harder. It doesn't come from more rituals, more affirmations, or even more knowledge. It comes from embodiment, from radical self-ownership, from being so unapologetically yourself, shadow and all, that the universe recognizes you as a sovereign node in the matrix, a fully online, fully aware, fully awake creator. Not a seeker, not a follower, but a being who remembers who they are and walks that remembrance like a flame. To be this kind of reality hacker, you must understand one thing: time is malleable, not linear, not fixed. Every moment you step deeper into your truth, you collapse the old timelines where you betrayed yourself. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you upgrade your path. Every time you pause, breathe, and respond from alignment rather than reaction, you shift the quantum field. You're not waiting for your future, you're creating it with every breath, every choice, every vibration you emit. And what's wild is that you don't even have to try. When you become congruent, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are aligned with your highest truth, reality starts to bend toward you. The right people show up. The right opportunities unfold. Synchronicities multiply. Why? Because the version of you who already lives that life is pulling you toward itself. That's the higher timeline, and you access it not by striving, but by being. But let's be real, this isn't about perfection. You don't have to be healed, fixed, enlightened, or flawless. You just have to be integrated. You have to stop running from yourself. Because when your inner child, your shadow, your higher self, and your human self are all sitting at the same table, you become undeniable. The universe can't ignore you. You're not fragmented anymore. You're whole. And wholeness bends reality. So I'll ask you one final question. If you stopped holding back, if you let your presence be honest, raw, wild, and true, what timeline would you instantly collapse, and what new reality would rise in its place? This is the moment where you stop playing small. This is the moment where you stop waiting for signs and realize you are the sign. You are the miracle they told you to look for. You are the glitch in the matrix. You are the proof that shadow and light, when fused, create not chaos, but creation itself. You've learned to feel. You've learned to alchemize. You've learned to disrupt. And now you remember, you're not here to follow the script. You're here to rewrite it. You've got a rare shadow power that warps reality, and now you know how to use it.